Ma'am, can we speak with you for a moment?
Excuse me?
Step over here, please.
This way, miss. Let's go to the back.
I don't understand. What's going on?
We'll explain in the office. Right this way.
Everybody's looking at me. I just need to cash my check.
Okay, ma'am. Step through here.
Tatiana walked into the bank on a Tuesday afternoon to deposit a check from her employer, a simple task she had done hundreds of times before. Within 15 minutes, she would find herself surrounded by security guards, questioned like a criminal, and humiliated in front of dozens of customers. Her only crime? Being a black woman trying to access her own money. What the bank didn't know was that their attempt to cover up what happened that day would eventually lead to their downfall in a courtroom, thanks to a stranger with a cell phone who captured everything. Before we continue, where are you watching from? If this is your first time here, please hit that subscribe button. Stories like Tatiana's need to be heard, and your support helps us share them. Thank you. Tatiana had been banking with this particular institution for 7 years. She had a checking account, a savings account, and had never once had any issues with her finances. She paid her bills on time, maintained a good balance, and followed every rule the bank had. She was a nurse at a local hospital, working long shifts to help people during one of the hardest times in recent history. The check she came to deposit that day was her paycheck, money she had earned through hard work and dedication. The bank was located in a neighborhood where Tatiana had lived for 3 years. It wasn't her first time at this specific branch. She had been there at least once a month, sometimes more. The tellers had seen her face before. Her account history was clean. Everything about her banking relationship was normal and unremarkable. When Tatiana entered the bank that day, she waited in line like everyone else. There were about 6 people ahead of her. She checked her phone, looked at the time, and thought about what groceries she needed to pick up after this errand. It was supposed to be a quick stop. Get in, deposit the check, get out, and continue with her day. Her turn came. She approached the counter and handed the teller her check along with her ID. The check was for $3,200, her bi-weekly payment from the hospital. For a nurse working overtime shifts, this amount was completely normal. The teller, a young woman who Tatiana had never seen before, took the check and examined it. She looked at it for longer than usual. Then she picked up the phone at her desk and called someone. Tatiana assumed maybe the system was down or there was some technical issue. These things happen. But then a manager appeared. He took the check, looked at Tatiana, looked back at the check, and asked her to step aside. He said they needed to verify some information. Tatiana felt her stomach tighten but complied. She had nothing to hide. This was her legitimate paycheck from her legitimate job. She stood to the side while other customers continued their transactions. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Tatiana asked what was taking so long. The manager told her they were just being thorough. She asked what they needed to verify. He didn't give her a clear answer. 15 minutes into this ordeal, 2 security guards approached her. They asked her to come with them to a back office. Tatiana's heart started racing. She asked why. They said the manager wanted to speak with her privately. She looked around the bank and noticed that other customers were staring. Some whispered to each other. She felt her face grow hot with embarrassment. In the back office, the manager sat across from her with her check and ID still in his hands. He began asking questions. Where did she work? How long had she worked there? Why was the check for this amount? Did she have proof of employment? Tatiana answered every question, though she couldn't understand why any of this was necessary. She showed him her work badge from the hospital. She offered to call her supervisor. She explained that she had been banking here for 7 years and had deposited countless paychecks before. The manager then said something that made Tatiana's blood run cold. He said they had reason to believe the check might be fraudulent. He said they were going to hold on to it while they contacted her employer to verify it was real. He said this could take several days. Tatiana asked what reason they had to think it was fake. The manager couldn't provide a specific answer. He mentioned that the amount seemed unusual. Tatiana pointed out that her account history would show similar deposits every 2 weeks. He ignored this point. She asked to speak to someone higher up. The manager said he was the highest authority at the branch at that moment. She asked for corporate contact information. He said he would have someone call her. She asked for her check back if they weren't going to process it. He said they needed to hold it for investigation. Tatiana felt trapped. She knew something was wrong about this entire situation. She had broken no laws. She had provided identification. She had answered all their questions. Yet she was being treated like a criminal trying to scam the bank. What happened next made everything worse. The manager suggested that maybe she should leave and come back another day. But Tatiana's check and ID were still on his desk. She said she wasn't leaving without her property. He called the security guards back into the room. The guards stood by the door. The manager told Tatiana again that she should leave. She repeated that she wanted her check and ID returned to her immediately. The tension in the room was thick. Tatiana's hands were shaking, not from fear but from anger and humiliation. Finally, after another 10 minutes of back and forth, the manager returned her ID and check. He said they couldn't process her transaction today. He didn't apologize. He didn't explain what legitimate reason they had for treating her this way. He simply escorted her out of the office and back through the main lobby of the bank. Tatiana walked through that lobby with every eye on her. The other customers had clearly assumed something criminal had occurred. The guards followed her all the way to the exit. She left the bank after nearly 45 minutes of interrogation and humiliation, still holding the check she had come to deposit. She sat in her car in the parking lot and cried, not just from anger, but from the deep wound of being treated as less than human. She had done everything right in her life. She worked hard, paid her taxes, helped save lives as a nurse, and followed every rule society had. Yet none of that mattered when she walked into that bank. Tatiana drove to a different branch of the same bank across town. She walked in and approached a teller. She handed over the same check and ID. The transaction took 3 minutes. No questions, no managers, no security guards, no accusations. The teller processed her deposit, gave her a receipt and wished her a good day. This confirmed what Tatiana already knew in her gut. The problem wasn't her check. The problem wasn't her account. The problem was the color of her skin. That evening, Tatiana told her sister what had happened. Her sister encouraged her to file a complaint with the bank's corporate office. Tatiana did exactly that. She wrote a detailed account of everything that occurred, including the names of the manager and security guards involved. She sent it through the bank's official complaint system. 2 weeks later, she received a response. It was a generic letter that apologized for any inconvenience, but stated that the bank's employees had followed proper protocol for verifying suspicious transactions. The letter offered no real acknowledgement of what had happened. It certainly didn't acknowledge the racial profiling that Tatiana had experienced. Tatiana wasn't satisfied. She reached out to a civil rights organization in her city. They listened to her story and connected her with a lawyer who specialized in discrimination cases. The lawyer's name was Mr. Freeman, and he had handled several cases involving racial bias in financial institutions. Mr. Freeman heard Tatiana's full account. He asked detailed questions about the timeline, the employees involved, and what happened at the second branch. He told Tatiana that her case sounded strong, but that these cases were always challenging. Banks had powerful legal teams and deep pockets. They rarely admitted wrongdoing. But Tatiana wasn't looking for an easy fight. She was looking for justice. She told Mr. Freeman she wanted to move forward. The lawyer sent a formal letter to the bank, outlining the discrimination that occurred and requesting compensation for the emotional distress and civil rights violation his client experienced. The bank's legal team responded by denying all allegations. They claimed their employees had reasonable suspicion to verify the check, and that race played no factor in their decision-making. Mr. Freeman filed a lawsuit. The case became official. Tatiana was now suing the bank for racial discrimination, emotional distress, and violation of her civil rights. The local news picked up the story. A reporter interviewed Tatiana, and she shared what happened to her that day. The segment aired on the evening news with the headline, "Banking While Black." The story resonated with people across the city. Dozens of other customers came forward with similar experiences at various branches of the same bank. The bank released a public statement saying they did not tolerate discrimination of any kind and that they were taking the lawsuit seriously. Behind the scenes, their lawyers were preparing for battle. If you've ever experienced something like this, or know someone who has, type "justice" in the comments. It helps others know they're not alone. As the case moved forward, Mr. Freeman filed a request for evidence. He wanted the bank's internal records about the incident. He wanted the employee handbook showing their protocols for verifying checks. Most importantly, he wanted the security camera footage from that day. The bank had cameras throughout their branches. They recorded everything that happened in the lobby, at the teller stations, and in the back offices. This footage would show exactly how Tatiana was treated. It would show how long she was detained. It would show the faces of the employees involved and potentially capture audio of what was said. The footage was crucial to the case. Mr. Freeman filed a formal request for the bank to preserve all video evidence from the date in question. This is standard procedure in lawsuits. Once a legal request is made, the organization must preserve evidence. Destroying it would be illegal. Months passed as the legal process moved slowly through the system. Discovery continued. Depositions were scheduled. The bank's lawyers fought hard against every request Mr. Freeman made. They tried to get the case dismissed multiple times. Each time the judge allowed it to continue. Then came the day when the video footage was supposed to be turned over to Tatiana's legal team. Mr. Freeman received a message from the bank's lawyers. They claimed there was a problem with the security system. They said that due to a technical malfunction, the footage from that specific day had been permanently lost. Mr. Freeman immediately smelled something wrong. He asked for documentation of this technical malfunction. He asked for records showing when it was discovered and what steps were taken to recover the data. The bank provided vague responses and incomplete documentation. The lawyer filed a motion with the court. He argued that the bank had deliberately destroyed evidence after being legally required to preserve it. This is called spoliation of evidence, and it's a serious matter. If proven, it can result in severe penalties and can lead a jury to assume the destroyed evidence would have helped the other side's case. The judge ordered a hearing on the matter. The bank's IT department had to provide testimony about their security systems, their backup procedures, and what exactly happened to the footage. Their explanations were inconsistent and unconvincing. The bank claimed the cameras had malfunctioned, but records showed the system was working fine before and after the date in question. They claimed there were no backups, but their own policy manual stated that footage was backed up to a cloud server for 90 days. They claimed the malfunction was discovered during routine maintenance, but there were no maintenance logs from that time period. Everything pointed to one conclusion. The bank had deleted the footage on purpose. The judge didn't rule immediately, but the questioning made it clear he was skeptical of the bank's story. Mr. Freeman felt they had a strong argument for spoliation, but the case would be harder to prove without the actual video of what happened. It would come down to Tatiana's word against the bank employee's word. Then something unexpected happened. A man named Chris reached out to Mr. Freeman's office. Chris explained that he had been at the bank that day. He had been waiting in line and he witnessed everything that happened to Tatiana. But more importantly, he had recorded it. Chris explained that he had his phone out because he was texting with his wife while waiting in line. When he noticed the commotion with the security guards and Tatiana, something told him to start recording. He had seen too many stories about people being mistreated with no proof. He quietly activated his camera and captured the entire interaction. The video showed Tatiana being approached by guards. It showed her being escorted to the back. It showed the stares from other customers. Chris had even walked closer to the office area and recorded through a window, capturing part of the conversation between Tatiana and the manager. Chris said he didn't come forward immediately because he wasn't sure if his video would matter. But when he saw the news story about the lawsuit and heard that the bank claimed their cameras malfunctioned, he knew he had to share what he had. Mr. Freeman could hardly believe it. This video was exactly what they needed. It was independent evidence that the bank couldn't dispute or claim was manipulated. It showed everything in real time from a neutral observer's perspective. The lawyer verified the video's authenticity. He had experts examine the metadata to confirm it was recorded on the date in question and hadn't been edited. Everything checked out. Chris was willing to testify and provide his video as evidence. Mr. Freeman filed the new evidence with the court. The bank's legal team was blindsided. They had banked everything on the security footage being gone. They had assumed it would be a he said, she said situation that they could win by creating reasonable doubt. But now there was video proof. The footage was damning. It showed Tatiana being treated in a way that no other customer in the bank that day was treated. The video captured a white customer who deposited a check for a similar amount just minutes before Tatiana. That customer walked in, completed their transaction, and left within 5 minutes. No questions, no managers, no security guards. The video showed the manager's dismissive body language toward Tatiana. It showed her visible distress. It showed the unnecessary presence of multiple security guards for a woman depositing her paycheck. It showed other customers pointing and whispering. When the bank's lawyers saw the video, they knew they had a major problem. They requested a meeting with Mr. Freeman to discuss settlement. The lawyer told Tatiana about the offer. The bank wanted to settle the case out of court for an undisclosed amount with a non-disclosure agreement attached. This meant Tatiana would get money, but she wouldn't be allowed to talk about the case or the settlement publicly. The bank would admit no wrongdoing. Everything would be swept under the rug. Tatiana thought about it carefully. The settlement amount was significant. It would change her financial situation. She could pay off debts, save for the future, maybe even buy a house. Taking the settlement would be the safe, practical choice, but it would also mean letting the bank off the hook. It would mean other people might experience the same thing she did. It would mean no real accountability. Tatiana told Mr. Freeman she wanted to reject the settlement and go to trial. She wanted a public verdict. She wanted the world to see that video and know what happened to her. She wanted the bank to be held accountable in a way that would make them think twice before treating someone else the same way. Her lawyer warned her that trials were risky. Juries were unpredictable. She could end up with less money than the settlement offer, or she could end up with nothing. But he also respected her decision and agreed to fight for her in court. The trial began on a Monday morning in the fall. The courtroom was packed with reporters, civil rights advocates, and community members who had followed Tatiana's story. The bank brought a team of 5 lawyers. Tatiana had Mr. Freeman and 1 associate. The bank's strategy was to argue that their employees had followed protocol and that any verification of a check was standard procedure, not discrimination. They brought in policy experts who testified about fraud prevention. They tried to paint Tatiana's experience as unfortunate, but not illegal. Mr. Freeman's strategy was simple: show the jury the video and let them see the truth. Chris testified about what he witnessed and why he decided to record. His testimony was straightforward and credible. He had no connection to Tatiana before that day. He had nothing to gain from coming forward except doing what he felt was right. When the video was played in court, the room went silent. Jurors watched intently. Some shook their heads. Some took notes. The footage spoke for itself in a way that no testimony could match. The bank's lawyers tried to cross-examine Chris, suggesting that his video didn't capture the full context. But the video was clear and comprehensive. Their arguments fell flat. Tatiana testified about her experience. She described the humiliation, the fear, the anger, and the lasting impact it had on her. She talked about how she now felt anxious every time she had to go to a bank. She talked about how she had done nothing wrong but was made to feel like a criminal. The bank's employees who were involved that day also testified. The manager claimed he was just being cautious. The tellers said they were following instructions. The security guards said they were doing their jobs. But when questioned about why other customers weren't subjected to the same scrutiny, their answers were weak and inconsistent. Mr. Freeman presented evidence of the bank's deleted security footage. He argued that the destruction of evidence showed consciousness of guilt. Why would a bank delete footage if it showed their employees behaving appropriately? The implication was clear. The bank's lawyers argued the deletion was an honest mistake, a technical glitch, but their own IT expert's testimony contradicted that claim under cross-examination. The expert admitted under oath that the footage would have been backed up, and that recovering it should have been possible unless someone deliberately deleted both the primary and backup files. The trial lasted 8 days. Both sides presented their closing arguments. The bank asked the jury to believe that this was all a misunderstanding, that their employees made a judgment call based on fraud prevention, not race. They asked for the lawsuit to be dismissed. Mr. Freeman asked the jury to trust their own eyes. He asked them to watch the video again and ask themselves if Tatiana was treated with the same respect and dignity as other customers. He asked them to hold the bank accountable for racial profiling and for destroying evidence to hide their wrongdoing. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they returned, the foreperson stood and delivered the verdict. Guilty on all counts. The bank was found liable for racial discrimination. They were found liable for emotional distress. They were found to have destroyed evidence. The jury awarded Tatiana compensatory damages of $200,000 for the harm she suffered. Then they awarded punitive damages of $1.3 million to punish the bank and deter future discrimination. The courtroom erupted in applause. The judge had to call for order. Tatiana sat in her chair with tears streaming down her face. Not tears of sadness this time, but tears of validation. Our jury of her peers had listened to her story and believed her. They had seen what happened and called it what it was: racism. Mr. Freeman hugged his client. Chris, who had attended the trial, smiled from the gallery. The bank's lawyers immediately began discussing an appeal, but the damage was done. The verdict made national news. Headlines across the country shared Tatiana's story and the jury's decision. The bank's stock price dropped. Civil rights organizations celebrated the outcome as a significant victory. Other customers who had experienced similar treatment felt encouraged to come forward with their own stories. The bank issued a public apology. They claimed they were committed to reviewing their policies and providing additional training to employees. They said discrimination had no place in their organization. These were the same talking points corporations always use, but this time they came with a $1.5 million price tag. The bank did appeal the verdict, but several months later, a higher court upheld the jury's decision. The bank finally paid the full amount to Tatiana. With her settlement, Tatiana did several things. She paid off her student loans from nursing school. She bought a reliable car. She put a down payment on a small house. But she also donated $50,000 to the civil rights organization that had first connected her with Mr. Freeman. She wanted other people who experienced discrimination to have access to legal help. Chris, the stranger who recorded the video, became a friend. Tatiana thanked him personally for stepping forward when he didn't have to. He told her that he had children and wanted them to grow up in a world where people stood up for what was right, even when it was uncomfortable. The case had broader impacts beyond Tatiana's personal victory. Several other customers filed similar lawsuits against the same bank. The bank eventually settled those cases and implemented mandatory anti-bias training for all employees. They hired a third-party firm to audit their practices and identify areas where discrimination might be occurring. Tatiana's story became part of a larger conversation about racial profiling in everyday situations. Banks, stores, and other businesses faced increased scrutiny about how they treated customers of color. Some organizations took proactive steps to address these issues. Others waited until they faced lawsuits of their own. For Tatiana, the victory was never just about money. It was about being seen, being heard, and being believed. It was about holding a powerful institution accountable when they thought they could get away with treating her as less than human. It was about making sure the next black woman who walked into that bank to deposit her paycheck wouldn't have to endure what she endured. The case became a reference point in civil rights law. Lawyers handling discrimination cases cited it as precedent. Law schools used it as a teaching example. It showed that even when powerful organizations try to destroy evidence and hide their wrongdoing, the truth can still come to light. It also showed the importance of ordinary people like Chris, who witness injustice and choose to act. Without his video, Tatiana's case would have been much harder to prove. His decision to press record on his phone and then come forward months later made all the difference. Years after the verdict, Tatiana still works as a nurse. She still helps people during their most vulnerable moments. She still follows the rules and does everything right. But now, when she walks into a bank or any other business, she does so with the knowledge that she fought back when she was wronged and won. She speaks occasionally at events about her experience. She tells people that discrimination is real and ongoing, but that justice is possible. She encourages others who face similar situations to document what happens, report it, and not be afraid to seek legal help. The bank still operates, though they've had to reckon with the consequences of their actions. The employees directly involved in Tatiana's case are no longer with the company. Whether they were fired or left voluntarily was never made public, but they were gone within months of the verdict. Tatiana's lawsuit didn't end racism in banking or anywhere else. That kind of change takes much more than one court case. But it did prove that people can fight back and win. It proved that evidence matters. It proved that juries can see through corporate excuses and recognize discrimination when it's presented clearly. Most importantly, it proved that Tatiana's dignity and rights mattered. She wasn't just another customer to be profiled and dismissed. She was a human being who deserved respect, and when that respect was denied, she had every right to demand accountability. The story of what happened when Tatiana tried to deposit her paycheck is a reminder that banking while black shouldn't be different from banking while white. Money is money. A legitimate check is a legitimate check. A customer is a customer. The color of someone's skin should never be a reason to question, detain, or humiliate them. Tatiana's courage to fight back, Mr. Freeman's skill in the courtroom, and Chris's willingness to share his video all combined to create a moment of real justice. These moments don't happen as often as they should, which makes them worth celebrating when they do. The next time someone walks into a bank and is treated differently because of their race, maybe an employee will remember Tatiana's case and think twice. Maybe a manager will recall the $1.5 million verdict and decide that profiling isn't worth the risk. Maybe another person witnessing discrimination will pull out their phone and start recording. Change happens slowly, case by case, person by person, decision by decision. Tatiana's story is one of those small but significant steps toward a more just world. It's a story about standing up even when the opponent is powerful. It's a story about truth winning over deception. It's a story about one woman's bad day at a bank turning into a landmark case for civil rights. And it all started with a simple trip to deposit a paycheck. If this story moved you or taught you something, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe if you haven't already. Justice stories like Tatiana's deserve to be told and remembered. Thank you for watching until the end.